Now, when I said the next 4 episodes are a bit of a faff, I was also including Redefinition. Yes, I remember that scene is in there, and that one too. If it's been a little while since you've seen it, and you're wondering what I'm on about, let me ask you a question before we get to the summary. Those 2 scenes aside, what is the plot of this episode? Do you remember? Redefinition is certainly the best of the next 4, followed by Blood Money. It's pretty entertaining, but with one exception, it's also just a lot of monologues full of vague and confusing motivations, some potentially unintended camp, and little else. All It's Nothing looks stylish as hell, but after the brilliantly written season we've had up to this point, an arc episode like this just feels supremely anticlimactic. I mean, I know I've always said I'd love an episode of these characters just hanging out together at the DMV, but here comes Redefinition like...
I'd like to test that theory.
The greater scheme, the big picture. Nothing to do matters. Forever.
I'm better than anyone. There's a lot worse things out there than suicide.
It doesn't work in spite of you. Nothing should do matters.
Works with us.
Why is it that I'm not on the floor this time?
Take all that matters is what we do.
The episode opens immediately on the heels of the previous. Team Angel Investigations, now just Team Investigations, is looking shell-shocked, leaving the Hyperion. I love how Gunn doesn't have a box. He sums up the problem of where to go from here.
He locked 20 lawyers in a room with a couple of psychotic vampires. I'd say his mind's changed enough.
Gunn's line is the last reference to the evil that Angel participated in. The rest of this episode will be them processing their fifis over getting fired. We'll get into why the arc downplaying what Angel did is a problem, but it leaves me feeling like Oz and surprise for the rest of this episode.
Yeah. Hey, did everybody see that guy just turn to dust?
Angel makes a big dramatic show of letting go of a live Darla by burning his drawings of her in a sort of vampire ex-wife effigy.
Both marriages ended in divorce and a burning effigy.
Wait, weren't you married 3 times?
My God, you're right. I get to burn another effigy.
Angel being a dark, pouty, melodramatic sulk after the events of the season makes a certain kind of sense, and I like a good training montage as much as the next person. But almost everything he says in voiceover makes the episode more confusing and is sometimes unintentionally hilarious.
I'm not ready yet. Too many years spent sleeping in soft beds.
This would just be silly fun if it weren't for the fact that flanking it is some of the most actually horrifying content in the entire series. Because of that, it feels a little episode-breaking. As if to emphasize the point, we cut to Lindsay waking up underneath a pile of dead lawyers. There's an absolutely fabulous twisting shot that visualizes his own rising from the dead. He thinks he's the only tasty morsel that Darla and Drew sent back to the chef, but is disappointed to discover Lila is still kicking. Virginia and Wesley ponder his future. Angel is still montaging.
When Wolfram and Hart take a life, they do it at a distance. I don't have that luxury.
Doesn't have the luxury. I'm not sure what he calls locking 20 of his foes in a room with 2 tigers and walking away.
I'm not on their level, but I can get there.
Not on the level of an evil law firm. I'm not sure what he calls locking 20... You know what?
Never mind.
But okay, he's not ready yet. Lila and Lindsay wonder why they were left to live, then find Smoke Show D&D waiting in Lindsay's office.
And what is it exactly that you want, Darla?
Power.
Okay. Angel is still monologuing in a scene that deliberately evokes the cold open of the series as he takes out a large band of vamps while wearing the iconic wrist stakes.
I'm ready. I've got the moves.
Oh my God.
I'm king, and they know it. When I snap my fingers, everybody says short. I'm hot, and you're not.
Look at how funky he is. I will never be hip.
Top that!
Okay, he's ready. Team Investigations run into each other at the Oracle, each looking for some direction. Angel tortures Merle in a mercifully voiceover-free scene. At a demon fight club, yep, bringing that back from the first season. Angel creeps on Drew and Darla from the shadows.
I'm not ready.
Okay, now he's not ready. The gang is now drunk at Caritas, having a bizarre conversation.
Angel is obsessed with Darla. Obsessions don't just blow over.
You certainly didn't help by making him feel guilty about it.
Yeah. Hey, did everybody see that?
The three of them singing We Are the Champions as a prelude to going into business for themselves is just perfect. We, as in they, are the champions, not just Angel. And that's kind of a little beautiful. My favorite thing to come out of this weird-ass episode. Cordy gets a vision and Team Investigations goes to the rescue. D&D are still trying to, for some reason, recruit a demon gang, and that's when they happen upon...
The key to burning an ex-wife effigy is to toss the flaming bottle from a safe distance!
Lila and Lindsay both get promoted to co-head of special projects, and the episode ends with Wesley telling Angel they're keeping the agency open and Angel laying one last egg.
Let them fight the good fight. Someone has to fight the war.
Sure, whatever. So, Redefinition is incredibly well made and entertaining. There's a bunch here that I really enjoy. The best bits of story are the ones having to do with Team Investigations, and the reinterpreting of Reunion's ending aside, I love them all showing up at Caritas by happenstance. Any excuse to have more Andy Hallett is a good one. Commiserating together about their circumstances, and then the payoff and use of the Queen song. Their arc in this one is pretty satisfying.
Angel's walked away from his duty. We're not going to.
The direction and cinematography by Michael Grossman and Herbert Davis feels crisp and stylish. I love a lot of the framing and camera movements. Shots retain a similar cool palette to the first season, but are starting to evolve and look updated and sexier, sometimes steeped in a neon and looking more neo-noir than the first season's classic look. And that imagery and feel permeates everything in this one, including the costuming. Especially with its memorable fire sequence, this might be one of the best looking episodes in Season 2. The big problem is that none of it ends up being in service of anything interesting. The first issue, just to make sure this horse is good and flogged, is that the writers themselves don't seem in agreement as to how much of a problem Angel locking lawyers in a room with Darla and Drew was. Was it just a Frank Castle anti-hero level of darkness, or was it an injustice Gods Among Us lapse into outright evil? I made some broad arguments for the latter in my reunion video that I'm not going to rehash here, but mechanically, and divergent though their tones may be, Buffy and Angel have a clear and expressed guideline. The soul. Both shows have stuck with the soul as the rule for where the protagonist's authority to act exists. And while we can hem and haw about a handful of specific instances that actually prove the rule, it is only for the unsouled that Buffy and Angel can act as judge, jury, and executioner. They are the warriors against the supernatural world, and anytime a character had a soul, the line was clear. When Faith stabbed Alan, she tried to make the "he was essentially as evil as a lawyer anyway" argument, and Buffy was having none of it.
But it does not mean that we get to pass judgment on people like we're better than everybody.
And that's because Alan had a soul. Angel tries to off himself in amends for the things he did, and Buffy won't let him because since he has a soul...
Angel, you have the power to do real good. To make amends.
When Faith comes to LA and wreaks some genuine havoc on the team, Angel refuses her attempt at death by cop, the same way Buffy refused his. He then goes to bat for her against both Wesley,
in case you've forgotten, we're not in the business of giving up on people,
and Buffy, because what this was really about was...
This was about saving somebody's soul.
And because Faith has a soul, every passing minute she is capable of turning things around, doing real good and making amends for what came before. The show itself, in I Will Remember You, has touched on the idea of time as it comes to issues of identity and redemption, philosophically rejecting the idea of endings, happy, sad, or otherwise, because there's always another day, and that's what matters. Speaking vaguely for spoilers, Season 6 of Buffy has some souled characters committing unforgivable, vile acts, and the arc is still written from the perspective that angry protagonists seeking retribution against them for it is wrong. And Season 7 of Buffy then reinforces why it was with a certain redemption arc. In Reunion, when Holland flaunted his indifference to Angel because Angel didn't kill humans, Angel's retort,
"You don't qualify,"
felt like the hollow, frustrated attempt of a powerless and downtrodden hero to strike and fight back against a titan. Hollow, because of course Holland qualifies. All the evidence of both shows to this point has said that a soul is a soul. The tantalizing dramatic potential of this arc that was set up seemed like it was going to be Angel not needing to lose his soul to descend into some angelicing.
Sometimes I miss that clarity. Take them all.
And my boy is still in there and he wants out.
You don't kill humans.
And tonight you're gonna break your one rule.
Angel didn't just walk away from the massacre at Holland's the way he left the Hyperion in Are You Now or Have You Ever. He locked the door. Preventing anyone from escaping is no different than pulling the trigger or inserting the teeth himself at that point. Compartmentalizing murder doesn't remove culpability. But from the opening of Redefinition, minutes after the end of Reunion, the narrative attempts to reframe the meaning of that event and change our focus. This isn't about Angel risking darkness.
Angel wants to go all commando? No skin off my nose.
This is about Angel just going lone commando. The heavy use of training montages and his hammy Batman Angel is the Night style monologues reinforce that reading. The team isn't worried about what he might do now or what's going to happen to him.
Well, my nose skin is angry. And hurt. And
disappointed.
And reframing the big problem to being about Angel's firing the team doesn't just break Angel's moral compass, but the moral compass of every good guy in the episode. It's one thing for Angel to have darker, grayer stories. I love that about the series, but it still needs to have as clear an understanding as Buffy does of its own ethical underpinnings that drive its narrative. And Angel aiding in the murder of 20 ensouled beings, according to the established ethos of the universe, was a huge moral break and needed to be grappled with. Redefinition offers almost zero ambivalence about it. There are still bits of the more Angelus than Angelus setup from the arc, but they now feel either profoundly dissonant or in contradiction to this episode's anti-hero redirect. As in cutting from goofy top that Angel is the Night style training montages to Lindsay literally waking up under a pile of bodies that Angel helped create. Angel is the Night also briefly smokes like Angelus, the Buffyverse equivalent of having facial hair on OG Star Trek, though it doesn't add much in a post-reunion character study of Angel. I've always interpreted the cigarette as he knew Darla and Drew would read it as a telltale Angelus affectation and used it to bait or to lure them into gasoline range. And of course, like Angelus, Angel is the Night also does voiceover. For those who didn't watch Buffy or don't remember, Angelus's voiceover was in the Buffy episode Passion.
It speaks to us, guides us. Passion rules us all.
In a season where he was the big bad, his voiceover was about being slaves to an emotion, and on a show driven by the philosophy of choice and the necessity for its freedom, his voiceover was a wonderful contrast in one of that season's most memorable episodes. Angel's voiceovering in Redemption is gibberish nonsense mouth farts.
I'm not on their level. I'm not ready yet. I'm ready. I'm not ready.
It's too bad, because if instead of the implied more Angelus than Angelus fall it seemed like we were going to get, this all just amounts to a return to the pre-Doyle Angel that the show started with. With its sewer vamp sequence, the episode even deliberately evokes the first scene in the series, Angel in the alleyway using the iconic wrist stakes. But there is actually a very significant, if subtly delivered, difference between the two scenes that I never noticed until this run-through, because it disappears beneath Angel's cloying blue cheese voiceover. Angel in the alleyway was saving two victims. The sewer vamps come into their scene talking about how delicious the victims they just had were. That is philosophically significant and speaks to good stuff we'll talk about in Epiphany. Not only that, but it's eerily evocative of something else very important in Angel's life.
It is not justice we serve. It is vengeance.
Evoking the cold open with a nice subtle shift, and the ramifications of that are so interesting. But Angel's at 11 monologuing power washes the scene into being irrelevant Batmaning. And none of it makes any sense.
I'm ready.
Ready for what? He could do all of the kicky fighty business at the start of the series. He could do all the kicky fighty shebanging in the middle of the series. Why was he ready, not ready before, and now he's ready, then he's not ready? He doesn't have a spoken line of dialogue in this episode, and if the episode had just run with that idea, leaving us guessing at what was happening internally, this might have been so much more compelling. It would have forced us to try and identify, to wonder, to worry. Is he grieving? Is he depressed? Is he lost forever? Instead, the voiceover abandons that intrigue and puts us inside the head of a character that's been watching Die Hard 2 on repeat.
Someone has to fight the war.
What war? Against whom? Holland is dead. His entire department, except for Lindsay and Lila, got furloughed. But Angel probably doesn't even know Lindsay and Lila are alive yet, so wait, what? Whose plan was what now? It isn't just Angel, though. The motivations of everyone outside of Team Investigations feel blurry or underwritten, with a number of characters playing the Holland Manors game of, don't worry, there is a plan, a big one. You'll see.
I doubt they even know what Wolfram and Hart's true plan for Angel is.
But let's be honest, Wolfram and Hart probably don't know their plan for Angel either. And Lindsay and Lila's job is literally to spend this entire episode just waiting. Darla now wants power and connections. Because reasons?
See, Lindsay, during my stint as Wolfram and Hart's puppet, something occurred to me. I loathe being used.
So Darla, a former prostitute in the New World who over centuries of immortality worshipped a master in the sewers, once slept in a barn with Angel to avoid a mob, got kicked out of China during a revolution, and returned to attending to a master in a hellmouth crevasse, now wants power because of a couple of bad months as a human? In some ways, Darla was always defined by having a patron, be it in her human life or as a vampire, feeding Angel victims and doting over him, likewise with the master.
I'm your faithful dog. You bring me scraps.
And in Reunion, there was a nice moment where she attacked Drew until Drew weeps about her loneliness. That turns the scene. Darla has someone to take care of again. It's in character. If she were interested in money in this episode, that would be one thing. Darla always wanted a view. But this switch to a desire for power feels shallow and confusing.
Our crusade is one of malevolent joy.
What crusade? What is she talking about? The problem is this kind of vagueness and mystery can work fine, but only if it 100% pays off in a later episode. If it doesn't, then the episode only works once. And I will say that knowing how the rest of the season plays out and which of these threads get dropped or just forgotten about by the next episode makes Redefinition work less and less for me on rewatches. In fact, the more I watch it, the more I think it all comes down to that ending sequence, which certainly is one of the most memorable and visually cinematic in the series. There is so much care and construction devoted to the filming of it. It is beautiful, harrowing, dramatic, and a new visual high bar in the series. And other than Team Investigation's B-story, the entire episode feels like it was created just to have this moment. It's foreshadowed from the cold open by Angel burning his pictures. It actually explains Darla and Drew going to demon fight clubs. The episode's plot needed them to, so that Angel had a way of getting ahead of them, killing off the attendees in advance, and being in the same place at the same time. All to have one very cool sequence, because, you know, tree bad, fire pretty? But the sequence itself ends up working as a symbol for the entire episode. Angel's motivations make no sense. Why did Angel do this? If he was sending a message, what was the message?
I'm hot! And you're not!
Nothing is accomplished. Darla and Drew get away. He doesn't try and slay them, and nothing changes, which makes the sequence just an exercise in style. The scene is so harrowing and graphic, and Darla asks with pinnacle melodrama,
Who was an angel? Wasn't Angelus either. Who was that?
But the moment, which would have been so on rewatches anyway, is already undercut by the episode itself. Because of the awful voiceover, we know that was just Angel, who apparently set them on fire to be mean? Instead of a fallen angel, the episode gives us jerky Angel having a sassy pout. And that just isn't a satisfying payoff for this moment. Again, Redefinition is fun. I just find it so curiously highly rated in the fandom. At the time of this writing, it's sitting at a very high 8.7 on IMDb, which puts it in close company with Damage, There's No Place Like Flirtsglurb, and Dear Boy, and ranks it above a whole bunch of Season 1 episode gems, including In the Dark, Somnambulist, The Prodigal, and Room with a View, all of which are episodes I thought were less polished, but much more interesting. Most frustratingly, with the exception of a breather episode here and there, the path to get to Redefinition has felt tightly written and incredibly meaningful. It's one of the best runs in the series that is full of ruminations on love, blood, family, abuse, loss, and tragedy, and it culminates with 3 stunning game changers. Whatever dark place those episodes were leading to, Redefinition doesn't feel like the original intended destination, but a stop along the route of a different storyline altogether. And because most of us have been down Season 2's road more than once, we know the real answer to the question Darla asks. Angelus was never this big of a drama queen.